This is more than just a podcast. It's a moment to stop, to breathe, to notice how you've been showing up. We were taught to push through, to stay strong, to hold it all together even when it cost us connection. But fatherhood was never meant to be survival. Here, we slow down before we raise our voice. We regulate before we correct. We learn that presence does more than pressure ever could. Because when a father changes how he shows up, the entire home shifts. Children feel safe instead of tense, partners feel supported instead of alone, and calm replaces chaos. Brothers, this is where awareness becomes action, where healing becomes leadership, where strength is measured by steadiness, not control. This is 15 Minutes with Dad, and this is the work, this is the responsibility, and this is how we change generations. Welcome back to 15 Minutes with Dad. In episode 1, we talked about calm leadership and how a regulated parent creates security. In episode 2, we explored triggers and why parents react the way they do and how awareness gives us a choice. Today, we're building on both of those ideas by talking about structure and not rigid rules, not control. We're talking about structure. Because for children, structure is not restriction. Structure becomes safety. So why is it so often misunderstood? A lot of parents hear the word structure and immediately think of strict schedules, harsh rules, and maybe inflexible systems. Others swing to the opposite extreme and they avoid structure altogether because they don't want to feel controlling or authoritarian. And sometimes they mix it up with like this gentle parenting idea. But research tells us something very clear. Children don't experience structure as control. They experience it as predictability. And predictability is calming to the nervous system. So when kids know what to expect, they don't have to stay on alert. They can relax, they can focus, they can cooperate. Structure reduces anxiety long before it improves their behavior. Why predictability builds emotional safety? From an attachment and developmental perspective, structure helps children answer one big basic question. Is my world safe and reliable? Research from developmental psychology shows that consistent routines and clear expectations help children develop. They can develop their emotional regulation, their impulse control, trust in their caregivers, and the confidence within themselves. Structure creates external order so kids can build internal calmness. And this is especially important in homes where there is stress, transition, co-parenting, past emotional instability. Structure becomes a container that holds calm. And so I ask you as a parent, as a person in your children's life, how much change have they had to experience? And if your answer is quite a bit, whether it's moving homes, moving schools, changing friends, divorce, maybe a loss of someone, ask yourself, how are you helping them deal with those transitions? And what form of structure are you inputting into their lives that would help them navigate those changes? And if you are always changing emotionally, where you can't regulate your own emotions also, how are you creating structure in their life so that they can regulate their emotions and build trust in you as a caregiver or control their impulses? The structure becomes the container that holds calm. Some parents push back against structure because they experienced it as punishment growing up. I myself was in that boat in some form or fashion. But rules were unpredictable, consequences were emotional, and authority felt unsafe. And others believe kids should just figure it out, or that structure limits creativity and independence, especially when you get into the Montessori space, like, hey, just let them explore. And here's the truth. Structure used without emotional safety becomes control. And structure without flexibility becomes rigidity. And when I was growing up and I was in these structural spaces, it wasn't a structure at all. It was control because there wasn't an emotional safe space whatsoever. Any sign of a mistake was grounds for beating or punishment. And if there was a beating, it was definitely didn't equate to whatever it is that I did incorrectly. But here's where the other part of that comes in. The lack of structure also creates that chaos. And chaos forces children to become hypervigilant. They start managing the environment instead of growing inside of it. And imagine what that feels like. Things that are happening around you, you're wanting to try and control everything around you or work through, trying to inspire or to move everything around you to be a safe space for you to be able to grow. That's a lot of work on a kid. So calm parenting lives in the middle. It's consistent, flexible, and responsive structure. For fathers, structure is one of the most powerful leadership tools we have. Not because it makes kids obey us, but because it makes life feel reliable. Structure looks like a predictable routine, clear expectations, follow through without emotions, and boundaries that don't change with your mood. Kids don't need perfect schedules. They need patterns they can trust. And if you are a father that have not done this in your household, I implore you to take this leap and create structure. And you don't have to be an enforcer. And like some people look at it as like, oh, I got to, yell at everybody and get everybody in line and things like that. But no, you got to set expectations and set consistency within your home. Because they just need patterns they can trust. And when dads bring that consistency, homes feel steadier. When dads bring unpredictability, kids feel it immediately. Your consistency becomes your authority. They know that this is what dad expects. He's going to be looking for these things. And if we're doing these things, we are within the bounds of that structure, but also he knows what to expect from us because we are all aligned under this authority. Now, what does it look like in different parenting stages? If you have toddlers, simple routines will reduce tantrum because toddlers don't feel lost. Toddlers have a lot of big emotions, and anything that fluctuates that looks different than what they're used to, they lose it. I'll give you an example. For my son, I usually, when we wake up, I get him up, I say good morning, and we, give each other a hug and kiss, show love, and I ask him, how did you sleep? And he say, good, and this and that. And we wake up, then we go downstairs, and then I make him breakfast, and then, I make him, his favorite breakfast is waffles, so I make him waffles, give him some fruit with his waffles, and I turn on Miss Rachel, right? And this is typically our mornings. He'll do this, and I'll go get his clothes. I already have his clothes ready, so I go get his clothes and I get him dressed, to put his shoes on, put his jacket on while he's finishing up his breakfast and watching Miss Rachel for a little bit. And then I have his breakfast ready. We grab all this stuff and then we head out to daycare. And there was this one morning that I did not do that. I actually kind of got him out the door quickly. I had to get him to daycare earlier. And so what I did was I tried to cut things down by I had his breakfast already prepared, sitting on the counter. I brought all his clothes, his diaper, and we're potty training, but I brought his diaper up at the time, his clothes, and I changed him inside of the room. I told him good morning, gave him a kiss, but I started changing him inside of the room. We went from inside of the room. We were walking. I grabbed his morning breakfast. I grabbed his waffles. I gave him his waffles. We got right into the car after I got him dressed. Like I got him fully dressed, jacket and everything upstairs. Fully dressed, took him to the car, and he flipped because it was so fast, and he didn't have a chance to really adjust to waking up. And I didn't give him a chance. I just kind of got him all the way to school, but he cried all the way to school. And I know it's not because he didn't watch Miss Rachel. I just know that he didn't feel that autonomy in the morning that he usually feels when we wake up. And so I say that to say toddlers have big emotions, and when that structure changes, they feel it very big. And in kids, their clear expectations help them take responsibility. They'll ask if they're doing something correctly. They will be at the age of trying to do the things that they learned to show that they are capable of being a big kid. And it's important that they know what goal they're reaching towards so that it empowers them as they're working through their life and trying to prove to themselves that they're able to do something. If the goalpost is steady moving or is inconsistent, they'll never know who they really are. And in preteens, this structure creates a freedom for them within safe limits. It allows them to know, hey, I can do all of this, but I can't do that thing because that is for sure not a thing that I'm allowed to do. I have to do this. And I know that because this has always been so, right? But it creates a sense of freedom because you can actually okay, hey, these are your limits. You can do this. However, you can't do this. You're building responsibility within yourself. So you can do all these things, but you cannot do these things. And that helps out preteens. Now, teenagers are a little bit trickier. I look at teenagers as if they're toddlers as well, but predictable boundaries provide security even when they push against them. So when you have boundaries in place, they're going to try and pass them. They're going to try and prove that they should be able to do that thing that you said that they couldn't do. And that's okay because that's just who they are at that age. However, when those things don't go right, they'll have a place to come back to, a place that is secure. Like, oh, wait, this is too far. There's actually a safe space for me somewhere, and that's not in this realm of things that I'm choosing to do. They're still going to push those boundaries and want to move them, but it's important that you be mindful of how they are growing. If they are ready for your boundary to develop, then be open to that. You don't want to be so rigid with your boundaries to where it becomes control. You do want to be mindful of hey, you demonstrate responsibility in this area. I'm willing to allow you to be able to do these things without me supervising or with supervision, whatever the case may be. But that gives them time to grow. And so structure grows with your child. It adapts. It's not one of those things that's going to this is what it is since you were a baby. It's going to always be that. It has to adapt. And it doesn't disappear. It doesn't stop because they're teenagers and they're pushing back. Teenagers are not looking for no rules. They're looking for rules that are relevant to them. And that's iffy, depending on who your child is. You know your child. You should make those decisions based on who your child is growing out to be. If they're very outspoken, they're very vocal about what they want, who they are, and what they want to be like, be mindful of that. And some of those things you have to take into account and receive that, hey, there's some rules they're just not going to follow. And in some of those, they're going to have to learn the hard way. But know who your child is. Some kids like to learn the hard way, and that's just is what it is. Here are practical ways to build structure that supports calm parenting. Let's anchor the day with some predictable moments, morning routines, mealtime, and bedtime. Especially, it's important for toddlers, but it's still important for your kids, your preteens, and your teenagers to have these things that are predictable within their life, their morning routines, meal times, bedtimes. State expectations calmly and ahead of time so they know what you are expecting of them. And surprises will increase resistance. If they don't know what you're expecting of them and you come out and say, you should have done this, but you've never actually had a conversation about it. Because once you state your expectations, you may never have to use the word should. They would know okay, well, those are expectations that I am clear on that I clearly did not meet. And the next one is to follow through without escalating. Like, your consistency matters more than the intensity of the moment. You have to regulate yourself when you follow through on those moments that you have to implement or you have to enforce your structure. But with that, this next one comes up and you need to allow flexibility inside the structure. The structure just sets the frame. Your choices fills it in. And so it's important that you have this structured frame of how you expect or how your expectations and your structure within the household and your plans and your predictable moments for the household, but also understand that the world doesn't work in perfect conditions. So there needs to be flexibility within that frame sometimes. And also, like I mentioned before, depending on the age of your child, you have to be mindful, or the maturity of your child. Now, it's not always the age. Sometimes the maturity of your child and the way they process the world around them gives them the ability or the desire to have more flexibility in their life. Maybe they're wanting to go and hang out with their friends outside, or maybe they're wanting to go to a public place and hang out with their friends to eat snacks, or whatever the case may be. You got to be mindful of what that structure, the flexibility within your structure. And the last one is to repair when your structure breaks down. You don't lose authority by acknowledging a miss. It empowers your family when you're able to understand that, okay, the structure did not meet this need at the moment, and being able to be flexible in that, but repair when the structure breaks down. Because these are leadership habits. They aren't control tactics. You're still guiding them. You're creating guide rails for your kids and for your family, but you're allowing them to grow with inside of it. So when things change, maybe you didn't catch it. They've developed something, some new thoughts, some new feelings, and they see the world differently. But that goes to show of how, in touch you must be with your family over time, and not just setting a goal or setting a rule and then leaving and expecting everybody to follow it just because you're dad. That's not how it works. But your structure supports regulation for everyone in the house. The parents feel less overwhelmed. Kids will feel less anxious, and conflict decreases because expectations are clear. And when it comes to you as a spouse, it's important that that structure extends through there as well. The expectation set in the house is what gives your family the ability to be under your leadership and feel like themselves. When you have structure, it reduces the need for constant correction. It lowers an emotional load within the family. It also takes a lot of stress off your partner or your spouse for having to manage this emotional load, because there's been expectations set in the house and they are consistent. But it lowers the emotional load and it creates space for connection within your family. There is not a perfect structure. You have to know your family, and you can build it now, but you have to start somewhere. And this is calm parenting at the system level. Now, how does that apply to the Aligned Father series that we talked about? Because the Aligned Father understands that leadership isn't loud. It's steady, predictable, and it's trustworthy. Structure is one of the clearest ways fathers communicate safety without words. You don't need more rules. You just need clearer rhythm. They know how dad's going to be around this moment. It's not about whether or not they're going to disappoint you or make you sad. It's not about you. It's you creating structure based on who your family is, who your kids are. I have a toddler and I have a 17-year-old, soon to be 18 this year. And I can tell you the structure is completely different. I'm learning so much from both of these ages, and I'm having to be structurally different and structurally flexible to encompass both of their lives. But if you take one thing from today, let it be this. Structure doesn't limit your child, it frees them. When kids know what to expect, they can focus on growing instead of guarding themselves. So in the next episode, we'll talk about connection before correction, why listening builds more cooperation than control ever will. Until then, look at your home and ask one question. Where could predictability bring more calm? And that's where structure becomes safety in your life. Before you move on, let's pause here. Because growth doesn't happen in the listening. It happens in what you choose next. So you don't need to change everything. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. Stay present long enough to practice something different. So carry this into your home, into those small moments, the hard conversations, and the quiet decisions no one applauds. That's where fatherhood is built. And if something here resonated, let it become action. Let it become consistency. Or become the way that you lead. Because this is how trust is formed. This is how safety is felt. And this is how generational change actually happens. And if this episode helps you, share it with another father who's trying to do better. And if you have a story, a win, or a lesson you're learning, email me at Lirec, Lirec, at 15minuteswithdad.com. That's Lirec at 15minuteswithdad.com. Because this work grows through shared experiences.